that Angkor was the largest settlement complex that had ever been built in all of human history before the Industrial Revolution.
The builders of Angkor Wat were masters of stone, creating a heaven on earth. But it seems they also created something else.
When the sunlight coming straight over our head, and the sun comes straight from the top of the towers, and it brings this beam of light down.
Archaeologists just used advanced radar to find a secret vault beneath the main sanctuary. This chamber wasn't meant for priests, it wasn't for treasure, it was a prison. And the evidence they found inside reveals a dark, unsettling truth about the temple's origins. What was so disturbing that the Khmer Empire locked it away under 5 million tons of stone? The Mountain of the Gods. Angkor Wat is, to put it mildly, a monster of engineering. When you think of ancient temples, you might picture a few stone buildings, but Angkor Wat is different. The site itself covers over 400 acres. That's bigger than many modern towns. The moat that surrounds it? It's over 3 miles long and 600 feet wide. It's so enormous that you can see it from space. This entire complex wasn't just a temple, it was a temple mountain, a stone model of the entire Hindu cosmos. The 5 central towers represent the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical home of the gods. The moat represents the cosmic ocean surrounding the universe. It was built in the early 12th century by the Khmer king, Suryavarman II. And get this, he built it as his own future resting place, a machine to transform him into the god Vishnu after his passing. To do this, his builders moved 5 million tons of sandstone from a quarry over 25 miles away. They floated these massive blocks, some weighing over 3,000 pounds, down canals and rivers. The precision is mind-boggling. The stones are polished so finely and fit together so tightly without any mortar that you can't even slip a piece of paper between them. This entire structure, all 400 acres, is a masterpiece of mathematics, astronomy, and devotion. For centuries, that's all we saw, the perfect divine structure. But not all things are what they seem. The first hint that something was wrong came from technology. Archaeologists were using advanced ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, to map the foundations. They wanted to see how the Khmer engineers supported so much weight on the soft, wet soil of Cambodia. The GPR sends radio waves deep into the ground. When the waves hit something, rock, sand, or an open space, they bounce back, creating a digital map of what's underground. As they scanned the area under the central tower, the most sacred spot on the entire site, the technicians saw nothing. It was an anomaly, a void. Right where the foundation should have been the strongest, the radar showed a massive, perfectly rectangular empty space. This wasn't a sinkhole, it wasn't a natural cave. It was a man-made structure, a hidden chamber roughly 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, buried deep beneath the temple floor. What many overlooked was that this chamber didn't seem to be part of the temple's foundation. The readings suggested it was older. It was built first, and then this billion-dollar, 5 million ton temple was built on top of it, almost as if to hide it. The team checked their data. They ran the scans again. The result was the same. A sealed vault, untouched and unseen, had been sitting under the feet of millions of tourists for centuries. This discovery was explosive. Every map, every blueprint, every historical text about Angkor Wat was suddenly incomplete. The most studied temple on Earth was hiding a secret, and archaeologists had just found the door. But this void wasn't an accident. It was a prison. Secrets of the jungle. The thing is, this high-tech discovery just confirmed what local legends had been saying for centuries. While tourists and scholars admired the carvings, the monks and villagers who lived in the shadow of Angkor Wat kept their distance from certain areas. They spoke of hollow ground, places where the earth felt wrong underfoot. They whispered about drafts of cold, stale air coming from cracks in the foundation, even on the hottest days. Generations of monks warned against going into the deepest unlit corridors of the temple at night. They claimed the air felt heavy and that the stone watched them. These were dismissed as folklore, just ghost stories to explain the unsettling feeling of being in such a massive, empty place. But these stories were so specific. They always pointed to the same spot, the central sanctuary. Then, in the 1860s, a French naturalist named Henri Mouhot hacked his way through the Cambodian jungle. He wasn't looking for a lost city. He was documenting plants and insects. To put it mildly, what he found blew his mind. He stumbled upon this massive stone city being swallowed by the jungle. He described it as grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome. His diaries and sketches introduced Angkor Wat to the Western world, and everyone was crazy about it. But there was a part of his journal that was not widely published. It was a section filled with strange notes and confusing maps. Muho wrote about the architecture, but he also wrote about its oddities. He noted several corridors that just ended. They didn't lead anywhere. They were blocked by solid stone walls that looked different from the surrounding structure, cruder, and built with a different kind of mortar. He sketched these dead ends, baffled as to why a builder with such perfect skill would create hallways just to seal them up. He wrote, "It feels as if the temple is hiding itself, rooms that end in silence." At the time, scholars dismissed these notes. They assumed Muho, a naturalist and not an architect, had simply misunderstood the complex layout. They figured these were just unfinished sections or later repairs. But what if they weren't? When the modern GPR team looked back at Muho's lost sketches, a chill went down their spines. The dead ends he had marked on his map in 1860, they lined up perfectly with the location of the newly discovered underground vault. Muho hadn't found unfinished rooms, he had found the sealed entrances. He was standing just feet away from the vault, separated by a single mysterious wall. The local legends were true. The explorers' dismissed notes were accurate. There was something under the stone, and it had been waiting. But Muho's forgotten maps were just the first clue. Angkor's true size. For decades, Henri Muho's discovery of the temple was the whole story. But archaeologists still had a nagging problem. Angkor Wat was huge, but it felt isolated. Where were all the people? Where were the houses, the markets, the roads for the hundreds of thousands of people needed to support this massive project? The jungle was too thick to see. Walking through it, you could be 10 feet from a ruin and not even know it. This all changed in the 2010s. A team of researchers decided to stop trying to cut through the jungle and instead just remove it, digitally. They used a technology called Lidar, which stands for light detection and ranging. Here's how it works. A helicopter flies over the jungle, shooting billions of laser pulses at the ground. These lasers pass through the gaps in the leaves and bounce back. By measuring the return time of each laser point, a computer can build a perfect 3D map of the ground, essentially erasing all the trees and vegetation. When the data came back and the digital forest floor was revealed, the scientists were speechless. It wasn't a temple in the jungle, it was a city, a sprawling geometric megacity hundreds of square miles wide. It was the largest pre-industrial city in the world. The LiDAR scans showed a mind-boggling grid of roads, canals, houses, and smaller temples stretching out from Angkor Wat in all directions. This was the hydraulic city. The Khmer weren't just master builders, they were master water engineers. They built massive reservoirs, called barrages, that were miles long. These reservoirs held hundreds of millions of gallons of water. But here's the wow factor. The canals and reservoirs weren't just for farming, they were a city-wide air conditioning system. The massive bodies of water absorbed the intense tropical heat, cooling the entire city by several degrees. It was brilliant, sustainable engineering, 700 years ahead of its time. This discovery was already history-changing, but buried in that same LiDAR data was something else. As the team zoomed in on the central Angkor Wat complex, they saw them. Faint geometric shapes on the ground. They were subtle depressions in the earth, perfect squares and rectangles, invisible to the naked eye but clear as day to the lasers. These anomalies were around the main temple, and when they cross-referenced them with Henri Muho's old maps and the new GPR scans, it all clicked. The LiDAR had found the surface evidence, the construction shafts, the air vents, the buried entrances that all pointed to the same hidden vault. The whispers were real. The explorer was right. The lasers had mapped the X on the treasure map. Now there was only one thing left to do. The LiDAR showed where to look. Now they had to look through stone. The thing under the temple. The discovery of the vault set off a firestorm. This wasn't some minor find. This wasn't a pottery shard or a hidden inscription. This was a massive void space detected by ground-penetrating radar hiding right under the central tower. This could rewrite the book on the Khmer Empire, but there was a problem, a huge one. You can't just start digging at a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You can't bring in a backhoe and tear up the floor of the most sacred temple in Cambodia. Angkor Wat isn't just a ruin, it's a living symbol of a nation. The operation had to be surgical, it had to be invisible. The team identified a spot from the GPR scans that looked like a potential entry point. It was one of those strange dead-end walls that the first French explorer, Henri Mouhot, had noted back in the 1860s. A wall that just stopped. It served no architectural purpose, it just was. Unless it wasn't a wall, unless it was a door. They brought in restoration experts, not archaeologists, restorers. The kind of people who can take a statue apart and put it back together without you ever knowing they were there. Stone by painful, careful stone, they began to disassemble a small portion of the wall. Behind it, they found rubble. Not treasure, not a hidden passage, just rubble. It was a crushing disappointment. But then they looked closer. This wasn't a natural collapse. The rocks were packed in tight. This was intentional. Someone had filled this passage as if to say, turn back. This discovery changed everything. Angkor Wat, the symbol of heaven, was built on a foundation of human suffering. The builders hadn't just sealed up a room. They had sealed up a dark, ritualistic practice that they wanted the world to forget. And that left the one terrifying question: why? The official reports are sealed, but the theories have begun to leak. Theory 1. The foundation. This is the oldest, darkest ritual in the book. The belief that a great building needs a great sacrifice, that to create a heaven on earth, you must anchor it with souls from the underworld. These people weren't just victims, they were the fuel, the spiritual battery that would power the temple for 1,000 years. The copper wire? It wasn't just to bind them. In ritual, copper is a conductor, a way to channel that final desperate life energy directly into the stones. Theory 2. The heretic's tomb. Remember, the Khmer Empire was in constant religious flux. It swung between Hinduism and Buddhism. What if these people were on the losing side? What if they were heretics? Priests of an old, forgotten god, or followers of a new path that the king, Suryavarman II, found offensive? You can't just let them spread their ideas. You have to erase them. You seal them under the very symbol of your new power. And those strange carvings? They weren't made by the builders. They were the last, desperate graffiti of the dying. Theory 3. The plague pit. This is the pragmatic theory. What if it wasn't ritual at all? What if it was disease? Imagine a brutal, fast-spreading plague sweeps the construction site. The healthy, terrified, have only one choice. They round up the sick, the dying, and those who tended to them. They force them into the nearest underground chamber and seal the door. It's horrible. It's tragic. But it's done to save the project, to save the empire. The aggressive Naga seal isn't a magical warning, it's a biological one. Do not open. Death inside. Theory 4. The King's Shadow. This theory is the most political. Suryavarman II built this temple to be his tomb, his monument, his stairway to heaven. He was a god king. But power like that doesn't come without a price. It doesn't come without enemies. What if this vault was his personal dungeon, his black site? This is where the noble families who opposed his rise, the generals who questioned his authority, the critics and the rebels, this is where they went. They weren't just disposed of, they were erased, buried alive beneath the king's ultimate symbol of glory. A final brutal message. He is heaven, they are nothing. The Cambodian government, in cooperation with UNESCO, has since resealed the vault. They say it's for preservation, to protect the site, but the secret is out. Angkor Wat, the perfect, serene, balanced symbol of heaven, is built on a dark, terrifying secret. The builders didn't just seal up a room, they sealed up a truth they never wanted us to find. And it makes you wonder, what else is hiding beneath those perfect, silent stones? Was Angkor Wat a peaceful monument? Or was it built on a dark secret? Let us know what you think in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe for more hidden history.